Hey, everybody, before we get into this next podcast, wow, man, I'm really tripping over my words. Let me start over.
Do you know what else I trip over? Kettlebells, because I bought so many of them from Grayman Gear.
No, that's better. That's perfect. Keep going. GraymanGear.com. Promo code ONESREADY, because you got so many barbells, kettlebells, plates, just thrown everywhere. Now, if you had a Beaver Fit container, you could put them in there and then you could do pull-ups and squats off of the Beaver Fit container. But mainly the Grayman Gear, for all the plates, kettlebells, barbells and all that kind of stuff, because you need to prep for the pipeline. But before you decide to prep for the pipeline, make sure you go to graymangear.com, use the promo code ONESREADY, get a discount on any of those plates and kettlebells and barbells that I continue to trip over, just like my speech.
You're doing great.
Beautiful.
So once you go to Grayman Gear and you get yourself those kettlebells, go over to 18 Alpha Fitness and check out all of the programs that Kevin Edgerton has for you. Kevin Edgerton was a prior strength and conditioning coach and fitness guru inside of the AFSW War architecture. He's out on his own now, and he's providing services to all selections, not just AFSW War, but SFAS and MARSOC selection, Ranger, anything that you want to get prepared for. Go to Kevin over at 18 Alpha Fitness. Use our code ONEREADY for the number one ready for a sweet discount on any program that you want. I'm currently about 2 weeks in, or about a week and a half in, to the kettlebell for jiu-jitsu program that Kevin has. I got to tell you, it is absolutely awesome. I'm not training for a selection. That part of my life is over, but I am training to be as good at jiu-jitsu as I possibly can be. And the program is laid out great. The app is 100% easy to use. And Kevin actually hits me up every single time that I finish a workout. Kevin is involved in that training. So it includes yoga, it includes breath work, and all these other things. He'll direct you to go to cold tubs. It's laid out perfectly, day by day. If you want to go to get ready for a selection, go hit up Kevin over at 18alphafitness.com and 18 Alpha Fitness on Instagram, and then use our code ONEREADY at checkout if you're going to use it. Good luck. Have fun. And now on to this podcast. We brought on Chief Master Sergeant, retired Caleb Ethridge. He has worked in every single position from team member all the way up through AFSOC, personnel parachute program manager, and a bunch of staff positions. Essentially, he was the highest ranking PJ in AFSOC for a long time. And, he has a great story of everything in his career and what he's doing now. It's really important. So thanks to Chief Ethridge for coming on. Hope you guys enjoy. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the team room. We have a good one for you today. You got the ONESREADY team, and you have somebody that is sitting in this team room that has occupied every single position from pararescue team member all the way through working at AFSOC A3. That's the highest staff that you can get inside AFSOC. Chief Caleb Ethridge, welcome. How are you?
Great, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, believe me, it's our pleasure. So for everybody out there, why don't you just kind of talk us through your career and kind of talk about your background and stuff that you've experienced as a PJ?
So I born in Portland, Oregon, raised in Southern California. All my buddies that I grew up with were going to go be Marines, all right? And so that's kind of what you do in Southern California, being that close to San Diego and stuff. And so
sure.
I had a cousin that was in the Air Force for 4 years, came in 89, I think. And then I didn't come from a military background or a military family at all. It was basically my cousin. And then I had an uncle that was an Army medic in Vietnam, but he was drafted into that, and he wasn't going in there voluntarily.
Right. Probably wasn't a big advocate to push you into the military.
No. None of my family was really happy about that. I think they were proud of me and they were happy about where I was going. But I was 15 years old. I started lifting weights, getting big into sports, and started wrestling, played football, was a lifeguard, occasionally went to the coast, got stuck in surf and riptides, early buddy breathing days. And didn't really know that at the time that I was training. So
yeah, right. Yeah, you were training and you had no idea. Everybody today has these robust training plans, and you were just scared in the ocean.
And having some wrestling coaches that were could rival some of the worst in-dock instructors, So smoke sessions early on.
Yeah.
And so I went to an Air Force recruiter just, hey, my cousin was in the Air Force. She said it was awesome. So I went and I just, was going in the Marine recruiter's office, went in the Air Force recruiter's office, and found that there was really nothing in the Air Force that I wanted to do. All right. I was like, what do you got? Yep. Show me what you got. And man, I wasn't even able, I don't think the recruiter, I wouldn't even go in their office until I was a junior in high school. So I'm a junior in high school and I'm going in their office and I'm like, okay, well, let me just start looking around. They're like, well, there's some pamphlets and stuff in that closet. So I go the back of the office and I start rifling through the closet, boxes on top of boxes. And then I see this one on the bottom and it's got a SEER instructor, SEER specialist. Start looking at the pamphlet. I'm like, oh, this is kind of cool. And then right below that is a stack of pamphlets for combat control. And I'm like, opening it up, and I'm like, well, this is
covered in dust and unused.
Air traffic control, exactly. I'm like, wow, this is pretty awesome too. And below that, I see old Mike Malta's face. And nice. I was like, wow.
He got a lot of people.
Dude,
I'll tell you, a lot of people
because he was a badass and he was standing. I can picture that picture in my head. It's burned into my memory. He's standing there with his arms crossed in the old Woodland camo BDUs, and he's got that beret on. That dude was a hitter.
Yeah. So I opened it up, and it was like, save lives, that others may live. Being a medic, and I'm like, okay, I had some aunts that were nurses, and I had uncle who was a medic in Vietnam. So I was like, that sounds kind of cool. I had my grandfather always told me, he's like, son, you need to work in the morgue, or you need to work in medicine because people always dying and ill. So I was like, well, maybe I should try this medical route. But man, that pamphlet, like, it was one of those aha moments in my life. It was like the heavens came down, and I was like, oh, this is what I'm going to do.
That's it.
So at an early age, I was like, junior in high school, I started getting after it. And started to be intentional about what it took to be successful. And man, back then, there's no internet. This is like 93, 94. And all I had, and thank God the recruiter had this. He had a NDOC workbook. I don't know how he got it, but it was all ragged. Wow. And I'm looking through it, and it's like, crossovers, bobbing with tanks, ditch and dawn, buddy breathing, water, underwater swims. And I was like, I don't know what this means, but I know I have to hold my breath a lot.
I've never seen letters in this order before, so I don't know what that word means, but I'll tell you what, I'm excited about it.
So this is a pretty heartbreaking story. And I know it's probably important because I know there's a lot of guys out there that probably get setbacks, and maybe I didn't. So I'm just start here. I didn't get set back in the pipeline except once. But it was because of my early challenges. So right after high school in 95, I took a pass test at Edwards Air Force Base in California, and I became a PJG tip, right? Guaranteed blood air enlistment program.
Yep.
It wasn't a delayed enlistment program. Graduated June of 95. And then there's this big festival in my hometown in Tehachapi, California, called the Mountain Festival. That week, we was hanging out with friends. This is like August of 95. I was supposed to enter the Air Force in October of 95. And I, hanging out with friends, riding dirt bikes and ATVs back and forth from house to house on these curved mountain roads. And it got dark, and we were like, hey, we're going to go back to so-and-so's house. So I was like, hey, let me ride this ATV. And it was still the 90s, and there's still three-wheelers out there. I hop on this three-wheeler. Never rode it before, and you guys can see where this is going.
Oh, wow. Those things are terrifying, man. Like you couldn't drive them like a regular four-wheeler. I drove them one time, and it was the scary. Like you had to lean different ways. Like it was this weird thing. It was always like, who thought that was a good idea? Like, let's take a tricycle and put a 1500 cc engine on this bad boy, and then put big old tires on it so you can just do whatever. Like that was the most 80s shit I've ever seen in my entire life.
Yeah, I was a latchkey kid, but I wasn't ready for that thing. That was a funky Bronco. So I take a curve too fast. Yeah. I launch through a barbed wire fence down a hill embankment, land violently on my right side. so hard that my helmet pops off, the strap, breaks, and get up, immediately think I broke every rib in my rib cage, and I walk back up to the road. My buddies see what happened. Another car sees what happened. They pull in. I get in the vehicle. And I start to go into shock at my buddy's house. I sit down and, they're looking at me like, oh my God, like you're cut up, your arms cut, your legs cut, your ankles cut, like the barbed wire fence just shredded and got basically everything down, from my neck down. But the worst part was that I was bleeding internally, and I didn't know that. I just knew that I had this impending doom feeling, like I'm going to die right here, And so they were like, what do we do? And I'm like, I need an ambulance. I need, something's wrong. So, couldn't get in any kind of position of comfort. I felt, so basically just lay down in the living room, and then my vision went out. Couldn't see, I could hear, but I couldn't see anything. And I could hear the lights, the sirens. Couldn't see the sirens. I could hear the sirens coming. And, first interaction with EMS, they're talking to me, they're trying to keep me, upbeat. And they take me to the little town's hospital. And I had this Indian, red dot India doctor working on me. And he's like, we got to give you a chest tube. And I'm like, a what?
Oh, tight.
And, he's like, yeah, you're going to be going down to Bakersfield to a level 2 trauma center, I think. You're going to go into surgery because you're bleeding internally. And so I was like, okay. So he starts, he's like, well, I'm like, well, are you going to give me any pain medication? I'm seeing what he's about to stick in my chest. And he's like, no, because in about an hour, you're going to be put under. So I'm just going to do a local lidocaine for the incision, and then I'm going to go ahead and stick this tube between your rib cage. And so,
oh Jesus!
Probably, when the doctors say, what's your highest pain threshold? That's my 10. When they go, oh, how much does your ankle hurt? Well, it's a 2. Really, just a 2? It's
sure.
Bent the other way. Well.
Compared to the awake chest tube that you had to take, there's a video.
Did he say it was going to be a little pinch? You're going to feel a little pinch.
You're going to feel no Trent.
A little pressure. A
little pressure. You're going to feel a little bit of discomfort as this happens. Just a little stick, little burn, little discomfort.
Talk about torture. I mean, the now that I know as a PJ what it takes to get a tube in between those intercostal muscles, you got to blunt dissect, you got to just dig in there with those forceps and just kind of spread that meat apart and that rib meat. And then you got to stick that sharp chest tube and push it through, man, it felt like I was getting stabbed in the chest and the guy was turning the knife. He would take an x-ray of it. He's like, man, it's not in there. It's not draining because it was a hemothorax. There's blood filling up my chest wall. And so he tried again, didn't get it. He gave me a bite block, and I was biting on that thing so hard, screaming, bloody murder. And
Chief, what was it like in the Civil War? Was it crazy?
Old guy.
Right. Get him some ether, gentlemen. Yeah. Yes, we got to stop the infection by bleeding him out.
Nitrous or something to kind of make me a little happy. But so
no kidding. Put me in a K-hole.
Yeah,
I eventually on the third try, I pushed him away. I was like, I'd rather die than you continue to torture me like this. And so, wheel me down. They'd send me down 30-minute drive, lights and sirens down to Bakersfield, and then I'm out. I go into surgery, and then I fast forward 2 feet of scars later. I got a laparotomy scar from below my, xiphoid all the way to my pubis, where I had a lacerated liver essentially. So 10% of my liver was mush, and I was bleeding heavily into my. If you don't know the liver, it filters the blood. So good thing is that it regenerates itself. So it, the doc's like, that's good news. Good news is you're in good shape. You're young. You're 19. Oh no, you're 18 at the time, and you're going to do just fine. But I'm looking around. I'm like, God, I got these. Like, man, that was a major mistake. I paid dearly for that. And
well, you almost paid with your life, which we're obviously glad you're not.
But man, the hardest part was to see just the look of dread on my parents' face, my mom's face and my grandparents' face, and my friends visiting me, my family. I felt like I let them down, like I worked so hard to get to this point, did good in school. I, dealt with a lot of adversity through childhood. And then I just did this, so I had to go talk to my recruiter, after I had recovered. I spent probably 2 weeks in the ICU post-recovery, learning how to breathe again through a breathing machine. And when they introduced that tube into my chest, it became a pneumothorax, and
perfect. Good. Yeah. Well, at least you weren't bored, Chief.
Yeah. And so I go into the recruiter's office again, and man, he was such an awesome dude. And I felt so bad. I was like crying, I don't cry very much, but I did. And I lifted up my shirt and I just showed him the 40 staples I had on my abdomen. And he's like, he just kind of gave me a hug. And he's like, I'm so sorry, and I'm like, what do I do? I'm supposed to be going in like, a couple months. And he's like, well, that's not going to happen,
I imagine there would be a slight delay now.
Yeah, there's a little bit of delay. So I healed. I worked out even harder than before. I got a couple jobs. And I came back in February 1997. I was supposed to be a GTEP again, but by the time I got close, my recruiter's like, there's a little problem with your secret security clearance. It's going to take another like 3 months. Man, luckily I had a guy named Sean Hauser, who was a PJ that came in with me, and we trained together. We encouraged each other. We lifted each other up, man. And he was going in. I was going to delay to basically go in with him, but man, I was tired of waiting. I'd already waited a year and a half post accident. So I'm like, what's my options? And this is still where they were recruiting out of basic training. So he's like, well, you can go in open general. I'm like, okay. So go in, and I'm basic training. Wow. It was pretty, I had a fun. I had a good time at basic training. I thought it was hilarious. And,
that's a good way to put it, because in that time of basic training, it was not the most serious basic training. Chief, can I put you on pause and ask you for one favor? If you keep clicking that pen, I'm going to get made fun of on the internet. We can hear it every single time you do it. It's close to your mic. Exactly. And Peaches,
I was actually thinking it was Trent, because I didn't see you had a pen in your hand.
Trent
had a pen in his hand, and I was like, I texted Trent. I was like, I swear to God, if you get
group chat.
I swear to God, you push that fucking pin again.
Yeah, he's like, I swear to God, because it's so loud in the headphones.
Close to your mic.
It is. Yeah. It is. It's right next to it. So I was waiting. I didn't want to interrupt because it's an awesome story. But Peaches threatened Trent with murder if he kept clicking that pen. So for Trent's sake.
Yeah.
All right. So there you are, basic training. I imagine it's the same. When I was in basic, they were still recruiting in open general as well. And they would wheel in that huge TV. It had like the strap on it, and they would play. At that time, it was a VHS. 100%. They would, like, a pararescue would come in and he was pissed like that. Like, looking back on it now, it's so funny because like I was the guy that would have to tell, and I'm sure you did during your career too, like, hey, I need you to go over to this place and do this thing. Go give a talk. It'll be good for you. And that guy doesn't want to be there. And that's how every single guy coming over to basic training, he's just looking around. He's like, listen, none of y'all are going to make it. Watch this video. Does anybody want to come swim and try to take this pass test on Saturday? And then like he's writing down names of nerds that are like, well, yeah, I wanted to be a mechanic, but I want to be a special operator now. So I imagine that's how it was for you. Is that somewhere on target?
Everybody in my flight was looking for an excuse to get out of the building. And so they were going to church every Sunday, and they were going to.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Everybody got religious in basic training so you could go out for at least a couple hours on Sunday. And then the people found religion and found out that they wanted to be a combat controller or a pararescueman too.
Yeah. So, I was looking forward to that briefing because as soon as the briefing was over, I went and talked to the instructor, and I think it was maybe Fahey at the time. trying to remember his face. So he's like,
wow.
okay. Yeah. He's like, so, all right, so you're going to take this pass test. And I'm like, okay, I got it. And then I went and did the pass test. And so funny. I had my own Speedos I brought with me. I had my own little mirrored Michael Phelps swim goggles from swimming in Bakersfield. I was swimming at Cal State Bakersfield, and so I had a lot of laps under my belt. And all the upperclassmen indoc students bringing out, these PJs and combat controller students brought out this aluminum trash can, and it had all the swim trunks that the other folks were going to use. And man, there was some nasty mold in there and mildew. And they're pulling out the shorts, and they're just like they can stand up on their own, kind of thing. And then the instructor came out, and he looks right at me because I'm in a black Speedo. I look like one of the students, but I got all these scars all over me. And it was Jerry Souls. Jerry Souls got this Buzz Lightyear chin, and he's like, that was my first pararescueman I ever saw was Jerry Souls, and I was like, wow. That dude is barrel chested, wide jawed, like man of a man, and so, yep. And I see all the students who are playing lifeguards, and they're just ripped. I'm like, I'm in the right place,
Yeah. Look at all these good looking dudes. I knew I was supposed to be here.
Exactly. I'm going to fit right in. So, basically, beat everybody on the swim, beat everybody on the run, all the cows, and they bring us in a briefing room, and Jerry Souls is like, well, there's only 4 slots for pararescue, and the rest are going to be combat control. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, so you got Ethridge, you're number 1. What do you want? I'm like, pararescue. All right. So change my contract, and I'm going to selection. And I go through selection, and man, I thought I was really good at sit-ups before I went in, but when I had that surgery where they opened me up, oh yeah, and if you ever have abdominal surgery and get opened up, don't watch the movie Braveheart at the scene where William Wallace is getting cut open. Don't watch that.
I have to imagine that would hit a little bit close to home. You were feeling a little bit.
Yeah, I like sleeping on my stomach and on my side, and for all those months of healing, I had to sleep on my back. It's just more torture. But every time I would catch myself rolling over on my belly, it felt like my insides were going to come out. But yeah, so. Only thing I really struggled with Indoc was sit-ups, and I almost got set back for sit-ups. Luckily, I kind of barely eked it out, and man, I went on to Key West, and that was my first exposure to Florida, and I was in July, and I was like, this is awesome. Get through all the schools, and then we end in Air Ops out in Pensacola, NAS. And we do all our water jumps and our rescue swimmer training in them. So basically my pipeline was, Florida or Key West and Pensacola. And I thought, being from California, I was like, California was a pretty cool state geographically, a lot of cool different things I got to do and see. Yeah. But I thought Florida was amazing. I was like, man, I want to retire and I want a boat out here and just dive and fish, and so here, and that's exactly what I did. I worked my way to eventually get to the Panhandle, and so career-wise, did the pipeline. Went first duty station with the 66th Rescue Squadron, where pilots, maintenance, J's were all in one squadron, and the PJs were a flight of the squadron. 66 RQS / DOPJ, was our
You had a team room, and a helicopter squadron. That's how the PJ teams used to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was it.
And I get there, and man, it was September '98. It was a week before we had that midair that killed 12. It was a 260s crashed. They were flying in tight echelon. Killed Justin Watasic and Jesse Stewart, who were upperclassmen of mine. And man, still no internet back then. And my grandmother calls me, and she's like, "Did you know that there's a helicopter crash at the base and the unit?" She knew the base and the unit. I never told her. She was a pretty sharp woman. And I'm like, no, I did not. So I read the article in the Bakersfield, California, and I'm like, oh man, this is the unit I'm going to. Wow. So I get there, and very first thing I even noticed was there's green feet on every single car in the parking lot. I'm like, wow, there's a lot of PJs at this unit. There's like hundreds. And go into the conference room.
Wow.
Go in the conference room, and everyone's like really somber and sad, and they're basically the commanders like, flight operations period are done for the time being. We're gonna take a knee, and we're gonna work through these investigations. And so my team sergeant was Senior Master Sergeant Ed Lumberg at the time, and he basically looks at me and the other young PJ that just showed up, and he's like, "We're going to send you to Moffett Field, and you're going to do guns and goggles." Mm-hmm. And I'm like, "Guns and goggles? What's that?" Basically, left scanner, on the left scanner gunner on the paper. Yeah, so I go out there.
Yeah, and I'm going to put you on pause to fill this in. So back in the day, everybody, pararescuemen used to actually like live and work in the left seat. Mm-hmm. So they used to be a gunner. So aircrew are also like pararescuemen also operate as aircrew gunners and scanners on fixed and rotary wing aircraft. It's part of our the entire like overall mission mm-hmm. statement and stuff in the career field. The crash that Chief is talking about is Jolly 38 and Jolly 39 at the Nevada Test and Training Range, happened in 1998 September. Pararescuemen on board that were killed were Senior Airman Jesse Stewart and Airman First Class Justin Watasek. And then, just a weird kind of thing is, and I'm sure you and CA cross paths during this time, but my first team sergeant was one of the guys. He was one of the last guys that sat in that left seat and flew as an active crew member. So just wanted to flesh out a bit of pararescue history. So basically what happened, everybody, is we were on board the entire time. Like we were, fixed scanners and gunners and stuff. And then we had too much stuff. So we still sort of moved further back of the aircraft. And then we were still sort of survival instructors and still kind of fitting into that door where we could. And then we had more stuff that we had. And then we were a real boy, essentially. And then we were, pararescueman was its own career field. So that was kind of the historical progression. So didn't want to interrupt, Chief, but, continue. So Moffett for guns and goggles.
I did guns and goggles and got introduced to Master Sergeant Leif Erickson at the time. And
wow.
Man, they had an incredible team, a lot of seasoned guys, chiefs through seniors, through master sergeants and tech sergeants that poured into me for that month and a half or so. Come back from that, and the next thing on the list to accomplish was medical logistics custodian, and I'm like, I thought I was here to be a PJ. And so they're like, no, you and three other guys are going to be running our med logistics. You're going to be responsible for like $500,000 of medical supplies, and you're going to get a $50,000 a year budget to order and replenish our equipment. So they sent me to McCallahan Federal Hospital, and I just went there every day and just kind of learned med logistics and learned it in our office from the other guys. And then once that was all said and done, I'm a gunner scanner, and now I'm a med loggy. They're like, okay, well, here's your OGT records. Let's go ahead and start knocking out some of your, your requirements. And then they brought in the, and you also have to do these things called CDCs. So I had 11 volumes of that to do. And they were like, you got to finish these 11 volumes in 6 months because paramedic volumes are coming. That's about 10 more volumes. I was like, 21 volumes of CDCs? Are you kidding me? Luckily, got through those 11, and then they completely got rid of CDCs. So, spent 5 years at Nellis. I actually, after 9/11, when was it? Before 9/11? I think it was before 9/11. I was offered the 321st STS in England. That was actually my number one on my dream sheet out of Kirtland. And I turned it down because, man, I thought I was going to get out in 6 years, and I didn't want to get out overseas. And I really loved the team there and the camaraderie and the guys. And I was 3-hour drive from home. And so I thought, probably better to turn that down as a first-term airman and see what happens. Of course, 9/11 happened, and then fast forward, I'm re-enlisting in Kandahar with a beard.
Wow!
So I, went on to Moody Air Force Base, and I got non-voled actually. So when I re-enlisted, they're like, "Oh, sweet, we're going to send you to the 38th at Moody." And at the time, that was kind of like a big team, and a lot of guys didn't really want to go there. But man, it was a blessing in disguise. I grew, became a team leader there, and met my wife there, and then went from there to. By then, I had about 13 deployments under my belt. So I was like, okay, I want to go be an instructor because I am wore out.
Wait, did you say only 13 deployments?
Yeah, I was fortunate in 2002, being a single guy and very fired up. I got 3 deployments in 2002. I was gone about 310 days deployed, and then I had a little time to go to ALS, and then a trip to Hawaii just for some R&R, and then I came right back. And then my grandfather passed away, and then I came back early from my 3rd deployment. A few weeks early, came back, and that I went to the funeral, came back, and then the team's like, "Hey, you want to hop on a plane to Jordan for the invasion of Iraq?" And I was like, "Hell yeah, let's do it."
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I do.
So yeah, that was crazy. So early on, it was the deployments are stacking up fast and furious. We opened up Afghanistan, then we opened up conflict in Iraq, and then I'm just bouncing back and forth. So ready to go be an instructor. And I remember when I was down at Indoc as a student, I thought, how cool would it be to do this as a job, like being an instructor for a while, because I love working out. I love, pouring into the next generation. I was like, so I always wanted to go down there. And at the time, the AATC functional manager was like, you got all these qualifications. You'd be great for Kirtland. And I'm like, don't want to go to Kirtland because I'm doing that. I'm doing that right now here at Moody. I'm training. All I'm doing is jumping night static line combat equipment every night, and I got about 75 static line round jumps when I was at Moody, just putting guys through all their basic jumps, their basic flights. Once you become a jump master team leader at a big team like that, there's about 60 PJs there, and almost all of them are 3 levels. They're just got all of them have their OJT records open for you to sign, and I was working my butt off, deploying, coming back, TDY. When I'm back at the unit, I'm flying just working these crazy hours. So I was like, yeah, let's go do the instructor thing. And that was awesome because I came in the military to travel, man. I traveled for sure, but my second goal was to get my education. And so I went down to Lackland, became instructor for a year. Then I became an instructor supervisor, and then eventually a course chief. And I got my bachelor's degree finished. And I was like, okay, man, I think I've accomplished what I wanted to accomplish. Thought I was going to probably move on from the Air Force, but I had a young wife who was excited about traveling, and we were like, well, let's go to Japan. Let's do that. So I was like, well, I got 2 rescue squadrons under my belt. I got to go to an ST unit. I kind of turned down the 321st, so let's go to the 320th. And basically had almost got a chance to go to the 320th. Promotion results came out. There was 1 master sergeant position at the 320th, and a guy promoted into it. So the PACAF functional manager called me, and he's like, the PJ functional out in the Pacific is like, hey, we'll get you to Okinawa, but it's going to be at the 31st Rescue Squadron. And I was like, oh, another rescue squadron. But man, let me tell you, that was like the best job. And I'll put my pen down because I'm.
Thank you. I'm telling you, like, it is the loudest thing. The only thing louder than that pen is somebody coming off safe on a range or in a house when they're not supposed to. That is the loudest noise that anybody has ever heard. You're like, who just came off safe? Who just
especially with
yeah, exactly. But that pen,
everything, every little click, every little sound. Yeah. So go to Oki, and I'm a master sergeant, and I'm in charge of the team. I'm like, man, this is exactly where I need to be. This is going to be awesome. And test for senior, and I made senior the first time, which was a complete shock. And Tim Tweeter was the soup, and he's getting ready to retire. And I think it was Nate Zen was supposed to be coming in. Well, I made senior. I was a senior select, and there's only 1 senior position on the base for a PJ, and that was the squadron soup. So I kind of, to the chagrin of a lot of the leadership, they're like, okay, Caleb just kind of forced himself into that squadron soup position, and we can't move him. There's all these different rules for assignments. So they're like, okay, well, all right, well, you're going to be the squadron superintendent there. And I was there for 4 years. But man, the best job ever. And then had a great time there, did a lot of good things. And then I get over so I basically go, all right, so I still don't have ST experience. All right, so how do we do this? So I think I was talking to the career field manager at the time, Tom Rich, and I'm like, how about I just I want to get back. So I'm in Okie. I realize I want to live by the water. So I'm like, how can I get back to Herbert Field? Can I get there and go to the 23rd STS? And I'm like, as a senior? I mean, there's a senior position there, but we don't ever fill it, And I'm like, they're like, that's a step backward. I'm like, step backward? What are you talking about? There's a senior position at the, well, you're not going to be the ops suit because you don't have any ST experience. I'm like, oh, I don't care. I just want to get, I want to get some special tactics exposure. I don't, here I am just being an RQS PJ the whole time. And I want to experience as much as I can in this career field, So of course, all those times when I was in Iraq and Afghanistan, I would see the little blue folder with the 2-4 assessment application. I didn't want to do that, but I still wanted to go ST, and so I did. I got sent to the 23rd Special Tactics Squadron after that, and first day I come in process, and one of the guys pulls me in the room. They're like, "We don't know what to do with you.
That's a great place to be."
Yeah. And so they're like, I hear you might make chief. I'm like, okay, well, so like, well,
that's every
senior. Yeah. I mean, that's the pool of people who make chief are the seniors, when CZ talked, he was the wing command chief out of 18th week out of Kadena. When I made senior, he's like, "Hey man, you're on deck." I'm like, "On deck for what?" He's like, "On deck for chief." I'm like, "Wow, let's not talk about that. Let me, I'm a master sergeant still. Let me grow into the rank, and let me figure this out first before we start throwing chief out there." Because to me, I never thought I would ever make E8, let alone chief, in my career. Because back then, man, it was so difficult to promote. So difficult. Guys were getting out at 20 years as staff sergeants. That's how difficult it was. And these were not, dummies. They were very intelligent, very good dudes that would be chiefs in this day and age. But so yeah, I just was there a hot minute, going out with controllers and Salties, SR, now learning what they do and learning how the PJs integrate with special tactics and the enabler mission, and learned as much as I could. And then I made chief, and they're like they predicted, and a lot of, again, to the chagrin of a lot of career field leaders who are just like, "Oh my gosh, Caleb again goes into this new assignment and just forces his way in to a chief position." There's only one chief position on Hurlburt per PJ, and it's the MAGCOM functional manager for AFSOC. And I'm there, and they're like, "Hey, well, this could be a good thing because, you need to be like an antigen. You need to go in there and just kind of, be different, because you could have been a special tactics guy your whole career, and you probably wouldn't see things differently. But now you're coming in as an outsider. You're going to probably help them out, and see things from a different perspective and a point of view. And so I was like, okay, cool. I just want to help and be of value. And so, yeah, that's long story. But I wanted to go back to how, man, that first, I'm chomping at the bit. It's like a horse race, and I trip right out of the gate as a young man, and go through that heartbreak. And I wanted to tell that story to a lot of the viewers, so I know there's viewers and listeners out there that they're going to deal with adversity at some point in their lives. Maybe you're not going to get away from hard times and difficulties. It might be just once, it might be over and over again. But if you keep your eyes on the horizon and believe in yourself, you'll get there. And I'm probably an example of that.
Well, and that's part of the kind of the people that we're out there recruiting, right? That's why we have people at motocross events and extreme sports events and stuff like that, because our kind of people. It doesn't mean that we don't have people that aren't riding dirt bikes and stuff like that, but that's like we kind of go after that people. But so you started mentioning off names. Like I want to take a step back real quick, just because I think it's no.
You say whatever you want, baby.
Yeah, you say whatever you want. I just think it's funny because a lot of the names that you mentioned, Jerry Souls, which because he was at Indoc when I was there, and you're not exaggerating. He had the Buzz Lightyear chin, barrel chested freedom fighter.
Nice.
Motivating as hell. Like it was awesome. And I do wonder if, because that was our experience, and we always looked up to those people. At that time would have been the Billy Whites, the Tony Alexanders, the Blake George, Ron Mans,
Erdley,
on and on and on, right?
Mike Erdley, yeah,
right. And are students that are going through now? Are they looking at your just because they're still serving? I won't say their names, but they're the Spencers, the Erics, those guys that are there now. Are those students looking at them and going like, holy cow, man, this is incredible. Because I remember that feeling of seeing Jerry Souls for the first time and going, this is insane. Like, this is exactly like the Mike Maltz brochure. Like, this is exactly who I picture a PJ being.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. I mean, yeah, I can imagine, the guys that are down there, instructors, they're being looked up to. And it's a difficult position to be in as a selection instructor, because you're the first controller, they're the first SR, you're the first PJ they ever probably saw. Well, for me it was, but now, I mean, they're getting developers, they're getting some early exposure, hopefully. But man, if you're that first PJ, you're that first controller, TAC P, whatever job you're trying to get into in special warfare, that's impactful, and it's going to leave a lasting impression, and I remember, Tony Negrone came down to visit us at Lackland, and he was the ACC functional manager at the time, and he was very concerned about optics, about how we looked, how we acted, how we spoke. He was really concerned to make sure that these guys coming in, they're going to be so impressed by us that even if they fail out, they're going to want to come back. I got to join this team. And he would lay into guys that were not cutting the mustard, so to speak, that were not looking the part. You don't have to be a handsome, pretty guy with hair, right, Aaron? You just need to be.
It helps.
It helps.
You need to be running and gunning and showing that you want to, that you can do it. That these 18-year-olds, they want to be you in 10 years. That's exactly who they want to be. And so.
Yeah, you're an ambassador for not just the Air Force, but for your career field. And you almost can't help it whenever you are popping on that freaking, bright red beret or whatever AFSC it is, you're like, well, you kind of stand out, and there really is no purpose for the beret. It's not functional.
Really big time.
Oh yeah.
At Lackland, everybody and their mother is watching you and checking you out. And I every time I could wear my blues or my uniform and that beret around that base, I did, because I was like, I've got to recruit. I'm going to walk around and I'm going to shake hands and kiss babies, and oh man, and the pressure to be in tip-top shape, because you start to get a little insecure when you're around all these 18-year-old, 19-year-old studs.
A little insecure, highly insecure.
You're on that pool deck and you're taking your shirt off, and all those instructors need to be tip-top shape too, because you're the one, barking about how it's going to be out in the real world, and you got a dad bod. Come on,
looking like you're built like a bag of milk. You're not carrying a whole lot of weight. You know what I mean? Like, you look like cottage cheese in a plastic bag. Like, you're not helping them out, dude.
Yeah.
Melted ice cream, fantastic. Looking like bubble gum out here. You can't tell me about combat. Take it easy, Michelin man. How about you go sit in the back?
Exactly, man. So, man, that I loved being an instructor. That was exactly what I imagined it would be. I didn't imagine going back and seeing Ross Kilbride, who was my interim commandant.
That guy's That guy is
he was my
cornerstone and foundation of.
He's a vampire.
Everything aspect war.
Vampire.
He is.
Yeah. So I had Ross there, and then I had Tom Newman, Vietnam Air Force crosswinner, running marathons in his mid 60s. So we had a lot, it's a couple different generations of instructors that these young men had to look up to. They got to look up to that and go, wow,
So we had Superhuman Newman, which is what we called him at NDOC. So no kid, true story. We're out running and he's like, hey, I'm going to take you young gentlemen out for a run today. Of course, just absolutely just smokes the living crap out of us and does it in such a nice way. Like he's like telling stories while we can't even keep up with him. And he's running and talking. So it was funny because he had a med appointment that morning because he's like, I'm having he's like, I think I have like a high ankle sprain or something. So he goes on this like 8-mile run. Like it was not a short run and it was not a slow run. And then he comes back in the afternoon and he's in a walking boot. And we're like, hey, can we ask what happened? Did you hurt yourself on the run? He's like, no, apparently I broke it this weekend doing a half marathon and I just couldn't get a med appointment before the run. So I just ran on it. We're like, bro, you're 700 years old. What are you doing running on a broken leg? Like you didn't have to, he wasn't even the instructor that was supposed to be on the run. He just wanted to get a run in before he went to the doctor. It's one of the most amazing. And his stories about, like submarine lockouts and him holding on to a single rope as like the submarine is just absolutely beating him to death in the ocean. We're like, wow, you're much harder than all of us are. So we're going to go be quiet now, if that's okay with you.
Yeah. Yeah. It was really, really cool to be a part of that during that time frame and be there with the commandants that I got to be under, Thompson and then Isaac's coming back. And, that was pretty much when I came back to NDOC to be an instructor, nothing had changed. It was the same NDOC selection course, from what it was PJ CCT selection, but now it's just PJ selection, but really nothing had changed. And we didn't really evolve with the times. And at the time, man, CrossFit was on fire. Everyone was doing CrossFit. And we started to look at how we're still graduating about the same amount of numbers. And, there was guys that should have graduated that were getting injured at the end, shin splints, hip issues, knee issues. And we kind of attributed that to, man, we're just running on the asphalt a lot and nothing's changed, And so we start to bring in Woodway treadmills and Versa climbers and the Aerodyne bikes. And there's some people in the community that were not happy about that. They're like, no, you need to be running 5 days a week on the road, and we're like, well, I understand. I get your point of view. But once we started putting them on those Woodways and doing intervals, the guys started to see the goodness from that, that because on a lot of those fartlek runs and interval runs we do with the cadre, the students can slack, they can accordion out. Mm-hmm. They can run a 7:30 when we're supposed to run a 6:30 pace. And when they're on that treadmill, they're going to fall off if they slow down, and I never saw so many students get off the treadmill and throw up in the trash can because they were getting worked. We were working harder than we ever got worked on a run. And so I think it was a big aha moment for a lot of the instructors who were kind of caught in the past, like, okay, this is good. I like this. This is a good evolution. We're going to use some current, methods and means to get better and stronger PJs through. And the same thing for the combat control selection course. And Steer was doing the same thing. We all started to kind of slowly evolve in the right direction to where we are today.
Yep. Is it weird to think of how many people that you saw puke as an instructor and how used to it you get?
Yeah.
Like you told the story about guys puking, and in my mind I was like, dude, I saw a lot of dudes puke, and at a certain point you're just like, yeah, there's students puking all over the place, and whatever. It's a weird environment.
Some of the worst things I probably saw were when, the students are wearing their brown shorts and their blue silkies and they're doing the eval, like their 5 mile eval run. and a guy has the sharts, he sharts pant, short.
Well, you can't stop once that run starts. You can't go.
This one run, I think a team, they must have like ate from the same bowl or something from dinner, and there was about 3 of them that had the sharts, and they just had diarrhea all up and down their leg, and there it was like mile 2 out of a 5-mile eval run, and they had to run to 3 more miles. It was disgusting.
Thanks for opening this door, Trent. This is exactly what the listeners are here for.
Like, we'll get it back, Chief. With your injury, before you joined, I'm assuming psychologically you had to overcome some things. And this is a kind of a 2-part question. Like, how did you get over that? And what are the psychological hurdles you had to get past? Because like you had, some serious physical trauma, and then to join, like you had to have like some doubts that you had to overcome. And then when you came back as an instructor, did that help you, walk some of these students through, some of the struggles that they were having and to help them be successful later on?
Yeah, it's funny. When I was going through selection, none of the instructors really mentioned the scars that I had. It was obvious. Most of the course, I'm without a shirt, and the scars were dark and purple and keloid, and they were obvious. And I don't know, it was almost like they had this like little unwritten respect for me that I had been through hell, and I'm coming back at, I want some more. And they didn't really mention to me. They didn't even ask me like, what happened to you? And so I kind of took that as like, wow, maybe they think I'm worthy. Maybe they think I'm going to be a PJ, I kind of sensed that they had some respect for me, as a cone, as a, not a PJ, not just an airman. And so I did like that. As soon as I show up to Key West, though, man, I had SEAL instructors and Green Beret instructors that were like, "What happened to you? What is that? You
right?
You must be a bonehead. Like you must have screwed up. What do you know?" Ethridge.
I know what bad decisions look like.
Yeah, and I started to get teased quite a bit, which during Indoc, maybe I was a green man. I don't know, but I felt like I stood out because of all the scars and the trauma that I had. But man, as soon as I get to Key West, there was like no mercy. They were just like, Air Force, get over here. What is all those scars? What did you do? What's your last name? Etheridge. Yeah, I saw your sister in concert last night. She sucked. I'm like, Melissa? Yeah, they were just wagging me. And I'm like, okay, this is kind of what
Melissa Etheridge does suck, though.
Yeah, she does. So,
yeah, she's awful. Terrible.
So I don't know. I don't know if I answered your question, but
I mean, you had to overcome like not only the physical, but like, I'm assuming there were doubts that you would ever be able to make it back on the front end. And then when you saw the students coming through the pipeline later on, and Indoc was, you're not like a touchy-feely place, but you are like indoctrinating these students into the culture of pararescue. And there are times when you can talk to students or give them advice or help them out. And I'm sure you saw opportunities based on your experience to help some of these folks out.
Yeah, unfortunately, I probably didn't do that enough, I think. When I first became an instructor, I was all fire and brimstone. I think most instructors show up. They're all anger and rage and, undocumented.
You're going to change the world.
Undocumented PTSD kind of thing. And so once I became an instructor supervisor, I started to calm down. Then I started to kind of pour into. I'll never forget, we just got done with an ETD, extended training day. And this is probably 6 months into being an instructor, and one of the students is like, we give them like a little feedback complaining session, and one of the students called me Sergeant Ethridge, and I'm like, Ethridge, like what is okay? I mean, am I mean or something? And but not long after that, I started to pour into them and give them advice, and family advice, life advice, financial advice, like just, hey man, you're going to go through the pipeline, as a grad, you're going to get all these pays, it reminded me of Master Sergeant Guthridge, another Ridge, PJ at Kirtland Air Force Base, and he drove in a Porsche every day and would come in and with Ishmael Antonio and do his pull-ups as he entered the building, even though he didn't have to as a cadre member. And he gave us a financial advice, and it became life advice too. I mean, I got a lot of good advice from like Steve Sanko, and my proctor out there. And so when I became an instructor, I tried to. At first, I wasn't like that the first year or so as an instructor, but luckily I was there for another 4 years, so I really had the option, the ability, the great opportunity actually to pour into these young men and help them through their journey, and whether it was going to be in pararescue or something else, or whether it was whatever job they're going to be in the Air Force, or even if they got out of the Air Force and in life, so yeah.
But your mentorship of young folks didn't stop within the Air Force. I mean, that's as a team sergeant and instructor and that kind of stuff. This is going to be a good segue. Right. So you
set them down the trail. Set them down the trail.
Would you say it set you down the trail to start trail?
Why are we like
trail
this?
Life,
guys? Why we got to be better than that?
So you're even in retirement, you are still helping to mentor and guide young folks. So what are you working on right now that is continuing that?
So I got two young boys. One's about to turn 10 years old, and the other one's about to turn 7 next month. And so I retired. I thought I was going to do like a medical career field, like PA. Was taking prerequisites, and God put it on my heart to like drop that, lay that down. You don't need to do that. I retired at the 24-year mark, and that was basically to spend time with my family, and I wanted to raise up my boys better than the way I was raised, and brought up, just as good or better. And I heard about, when I was in Okie, I heard about trail life becoming a thing. It was like 2013, I think, is when it started. And I was a Boy Scout, not a Boy Scout, I was a Cub Scout actually. I don't really remember it a whole lot. Don't really have much experience in that growing up, but man, I looked at the curriculum and the program for trail life, and I realized that I can teach practically 90% of this program, and I don't want to do this on my own. I looked up troops, around the Panhandle, and I realized there wasn't any in my town. There wasn't even any in Pensacola. There was one in Crestview and one in Fort Walton Beach. And so I talked to leaders in my church, and they said, our buildings and facilities director, Warren, he had been praying about starting a troop in the town of Var, because there's a lot of military families there that work at Hurlburt, a lot of, retirees, and a lot of folks that live under the poverty line too, single mothers that have boys. And so he was a troop master in New Mexico. And then when he left New Mexico to come to Florida, that troop basically dissolved. No one wanted to step up to be the troop master. And if you don't have a troop master, you don't have the 5 committee members of a troop, you're done. That troop is no more. So, I come in, and he's like, he's like, well, do you want to just learn about the program, join the Crestview troop or the Fort Walton Beach troop? And I was like, I call a buddy of mine who was my neighbor, who's an elder of a church that we used to go to at Fort Walton Beach before we moved to Navarre. And his name's Keith. And I give him a call, and he's like, yeah, man, I'm the troop ministry liaison for this troop in Fort Walton Beach. And I was like, get out of here. And we go get lunch. And he's like, yeah, join the troop. We'll get you a registered adult. You'll take your child safety training, and we'll do the background check. And I started to pour into the troop. Like every time that their troop master was gone, I taught like land navigation, like map and compass to these young boys. I taught, survival swimming. They had to do an aquatics badge. And I was like, man, this is awesome, because I'm working with, kids that are middle school and high school, but also kindergarten through 5th grade. And I was like, we need strong men and leaders in the future to lead not only their families, their communities, and our country. We need PJs, we need SEALs, we need guys, hard men to do hard things in the future. And what better way to get after it is when they're 5 years old, when they're 6 years old. Starting Absolutely. Early, and working on them, making them men of character through adventure, and then eventually getting to a point where we can make them leaders. And that's kind of the crux of trail life. It's adventure, character, leadership. We get them in through the fun of adventure, and when we develop their character, and then we give them leadership opportunities. And it's amazing. It's so much.
Yeah. For anybody that wants to be involved, go over to traillifeusa.com. You can get connected. You can start your own troop. You can find a troop. It's got all the information that you need. So go to traillifeusa.com, and that will get you all the information that you need to possibly start doing those things. And Chief, from us to you, that's righteous. We talk about it all the time. And we had a great conversation on the Citizen Pod with Dan Holloway. And young men today have 40% less testosterone than 20 years ago. They're more likely to grow up in a single parent home. They don't have that tribe of, as we get more connected, we're getting more isolated because everybody does this. Mm-hmm. They're sitting in their phone and not like looking around in their environment, engaging with these young men. And, it's imperative. It's important, right? Like right now, the red light kind of in America is blinking, and that red light is like, hey, men are failing. Men are more likely to commit suicide. Men are more likely to, have inappropriate relationships with themselves and others. And we're seeing a whole lot of issues, and you're getting after the root cause of that issue. And it's bringing young men up. Mm-hmm. It's reaching down and giving them those experiences. There's a very famous quote about warriors that, the amount of people right now that have been in gunfights, that have heard the sound of gunfire, that have been in a combat situation, those amount of people are getting older, and they're transferring out. And unless we tell the younger generation those stories, unless we prepare them for what they might need to do for this country, we're going to lose that. And we have to start somewhere. And this doesn't mean anything coming from a guy that has worked in your shadow my entire career, but man, we are so proud of you for engaging in that space and finding a way to serve and finding a way, as you say it, to pour into that younger generation. You're down in Tucson right now, and even that's not enough. You're down helping those young team members out and those young PJs out. And that's astounding as well. So, we always close with advice. You've been an absolute, guide and mentor and coach on, throughout the course of this talk. But, if you can talk out to those young men and to those people that want to try to do something, do something impossible, to try to put on one of these berets. We're still working at about a 90% attrition rate. So only about a, 10 to 15% success rate, depending on what career field you're talking about. But, what advice would you have for those people that want to overcome adversity, that want to do the impossible, that want to live a life of a pararescue man or a combat controller?
Yeah, I would say, do not listen to the naysayers. Do not listen to the little voice in your head that says that you're not going to make it. Because there is a thing in the world, in the universe, that wants you to fail, and it's gonna try to attack you, and it's gonna say you're not good enough, you're not gonna make it. Look at that guy; he didn't make it. He's better than you. He's stronger and faster than you. That whole thing, never quit. And I saw that thing that Ivan got. There's retirement, that never quit sign. It's.
That was cool.
And there are, but I will say there are times in your life that you might need to quit. You might need to put that down and not carry that burden anymore. And I saw a lot of that at INDOC. I saw a lot of people give it up and put it down. And I think a lot of those folks probably didn't need to do that. They had a lot left in the tank, but they gave in to the voices, the negativity, So I will say, stay around positive people. They talk about you are the average of the 5 people you hang around with, and so do not hang around negative people, whether that's in your basic training flight, the people that you work out with before you came in, all your friends. If they're all negative people and they're all going down the gutter, get rid of them. Find your 5 positive people that are going somewhere and surround yourself with them. That'd be my advice.
Man, Chief, you crushed it. From us to you, thanks so much for coming on. We really appreciate your time. For everybody else out there, feel free to drop a comment down below. Let us know what we could have done better. Like, subscribe, leave a comment, do all that stuff. And you can find us over on ONESREADY.com for everything that you need, from reading lists to all of our podcasts. We're on all podcast players. We come up on Google. It's pretty simple to find us. So, Chief, thanks again for sharing your remarkable history, your career, and then what you're doing in the future, which we already talked about. But man, that is so important. And once again, traillifeusa.com. So traillifeusa.com. Go check them out. It's a righteous organization. And Chief, you're an awesome dude for doing it. Thanks for coming out. Everybody, see you next time.